everybody. Thanks so much for joining the Dating with Katy podcast, a matchmaker's guide to love and life with your favorite matchmaker, Katy Clark. If you are not in the database, get in the link below. I've got fabulous clients. Ladies, if you need some coaching, I am here for you. And today I'm going to take it a little personal because I kind of needed this coaching. And it was so fabulous. We have Trevor Hansen here who is going to be working with us on attachment theory, which I have to say, Trevor, I did an Instagram poll and I asked how many people believe in like attachment theories. According to my followers, only 83% of people believed in it and 17% said it's just another label. I came to understand it a lot more this summer via one of my clients who is very mindful of it. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Yeah, so thanks for having me here. I never actually thought that I would be in this industry like at all. I, when we talk about like an anxious attachment, it's a person who typically has like a fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of others leaving them kind of a thing, combined with usually this negative view of self, like that I'm not good enough story is pretty prominent.
Okay.
And I had lived with that for like a long time, but had no way of like knowing what it was or even honestly being that aware of it. It just like tripped me up. And anyway, I'm living my life, going to school, doing all these things. I went and I graduated my bachelor's degree and started working for Tesla,
Okay.
corporate world, corporate
Right.
career, doing all this stuff. And I was successful on all these like different fronts, right? On financial front and all this stuff. But then when it came to like dating and relationships and all of this, I was never successful. And it was confusing to me because I was like, wait a second, like I got a good career, I'm nice to people, I got good values, like I'm in good
Smart.
shape, like all the
Yeah.
things that you would think would be on the
Yeah.
list for like a partner to look at. And I was like, why is this not working? And eventually I got into this really like horrible toxic relationship that I didn't leave because I think deep down I didn't really believe that I was going to find something better. I didn't believe that I was good enough. It was all the anxious attachment type fears keeping me there. And so I stayed and I stayed and I stayed until the whole thing blew up in my face in a really horrible way. And then I started seeking out some help. I was like, okay, I got to figure out. And it wasn't even about like, how do I make dating work? It was like, how do I just like recover from this? Because I don't feel like I'm breathing every day. I would like wake up with nightmares about the relationship and I was feeling really heavy all the time. And through the process, I kind of discovered this therapeutic world. I was like, dang, this is really, really cool. So I went and got a master's of marriage and family therapy.
Wow.
I mean, meanwhile, the intersection of that relationship ending intersected with losing my job at Tesla as well, for separate reasons. Just I got laid off in like this big
Okay.
corporate wide layoff, like the whole country just got shut down, and so I got laid off. I had broken my jaw in a skiing accident and got life flighted out of
Okay.
Solitude Mountain Resort. So like
This is
everything
why I don't
happened at
ski,
once.
people. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it all happened at once, and honestly, it was the moment, the layers of pain that I needed in order to humble me and help me to see the new path and the new way of being. And so I started to discover this, became a licensed therapist, worked with some of the world's top experts in the field of attachment, and then created something of my own, which is basically the guide and the program and the opportunity that I wish I would have had. So that's the most brief version of that I can give you.
Well, and I love, okay, so as a woman, you don't often hear of men having like heartbreaks. You don't often hear of men being the anxiously attached one. You don't,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, as women, we're the anxiously attached. He's the dismissive avoidant,
Right, right.
or whatever, the multiple avoidance. But so to hear you be honest about that and how you had, I mean, women are typically like broken after, breakups. And it seems like men are like, whatever, I can move on. And I
Mm.
just want to thank you and honor you for being honest about that because it
Oh, yeah.
makes you so relatable, especially to a woman who's like brokenhearted.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
of
that's
course.
pretty amazing. But you said, let's go back a little bit because you said you
Okay.
stayed. You
Yeah.
stayed in a toxic relationship. What does a toxic relationship look like? And we're going to bring this up because I have people who are single and people who want to get married. And like, what are we looking for? What was the toxic thing? Things.
Yeah. So so I got this theory. Maybe it's a little controversial, maybe it's not, which is I believe almost all dysfunction in a relationship comes down to one word and it's insecurity. And when
Mm,
people think of insecurity, they define it as I'm insecure about myself. I don't think I'm good enough and all that. And that's sure, that's part of it. That's a big sector of it. But it's also just insecurity in you don't feel secure in trusting others. You don't feel secure in your relationship. You don't feel comfortable, safe, and secure around the dynamic in which you have.
Yeah.
So I'll give you, and it's hard to even use that word toxic because I think it's overused.
Yeah.
I'll say highly dysfunctional to the point of the cost of repair is too great, and yeah, the cost of repair is greater than the cost of leaving, and in some cases, leaving is the only option just because the cost of repair is an impossible cost to pay. There's no opportunity to make this better. So, for
Okay.
example, in my case, I'll kind of play out some of the dynamics. My insecurity was I got in a relationship with a girl who on paper looked amazing, all these qualities, and in a sense, it was petting my ego. I could show the world, all the people who rejected me in the past, look what I've got going on. This is so great. And I finally felt, chosen. I think deep down, I didn't believe that I was good enough and that if somebody was going to pick me, they were going to have to almost be tricked into seeing past all of my flaws and my insecurities and the horrible, quote unquote, horrible parts of me. And so I felt like, oh my gosh, this is my one shot. Someone's finally seeing me. I don't believe others are going to love me, and on and on and on. And so I had an increased threshold or tolerance for behavior that wasn't okay. I was willing to put up with it because, if if they're the last person on earth, which I kind of felt like they were, then of course I'm going to do everything I can to stay. I'm going to fight and I'm going to fight and I'm going to fight and stay and minimize my own needs. Her insecurities looked more like fears of not being good enough, not being chosen, fears of betrayal, fears of infidelity, trust. There was a lot of fear, and therefore it turned into control. I need to control Trevor, his behavior, make sure he's doing this, that, and the other. And the dynamic became, her anxiety and fear put a lot of pressure on me around control. I said yes to it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. People pleasing. Got to keep you close.
Yeah.
But I would just wear myself out till I was just skin and bone, basically. And so
But
you
that's
can
kind
see
of on
this.
you because
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
human.
yeah.
You could have
Oh, yeah.
spoken up and said, "Hey, I need something different from you."
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And
Right?
that's what I'm saying is that at the heart of it, both have their responsibility and both
Yeah.
the ineffective patterns are driven from the fear and the insecurity.
Yeah.
The self-sabotaging stories of the I'm not good enough, others can't be trusted, there's nothing else out there, right? So it's on me. I chose to stay. I chose to people please. I chose to say yes when I could have said no. She chose to control and maybe manipulate the outcome and put a lot of fear into the relationship
Yeah.
where there in a different scenario. I think we were both very good people at our heart, had loving hearts and intentions, and you could totally see that, and that's what made the good parts good. And that's the thing is these relationships, they will always have good parts because we're not wholly dysfunctional.
Yeah.
We've got a part of us that's amazing.
Right.
And you might see that and go, but they're so great, but they're this, but they're this. And I think that's where we have to really be honest and say, okay, that's true. They are a good and loving and amazing person who has all these amazing qualities. But at the end of the day, there are certain dysfunctions, fears, insecurities that must be healed and overcome in order to make them and you a sustainable option for a relationship.
Would you say if two people you think are functioning poorly together, that both need to go get healing? Because
Um,
oftentimes that one person will be like, "Well, you need to go," and they're like, "I'm fine." What do you think of that?
it really depends on the dynamic. So that will only last so long. If one
Mm.
person truly is, let's for simplifying, and I know that there's way more nuance in this, and so we got to like take that with a
Yeah.
grain of salt. Let's say we've got a person who is truly like healthy, secure, respect themselves, respect their own boundaries, respect others. They believe in a hopeful future. They know that this person isn't the only option. They can
Right.
fill up their own emotional cup, right? That's the description of the secure. And then you've got the more anxious, who's maybe a bit more dysfunctional. They're exhibiting control, people pleasing, they're overly anxious, overthinking everything. And in a dynamic The secure can only tolerate a certain threshold before they set the boundary and decide to disengage from the relationship.
Okay.
And so they will leave. If they are truly to that level, they will go ahead and take a step out. And so in some cases, yes, there is an imbalance. The work that the secure person needs to do is short-term work, which is set boundaries, see
Yeah.
if those are held. If the dysfunction continues, then they leave. The other person's work might be deeper, personal work. And so, but I will say in most relationships, if there is an ongoing, what we might call dysfunctional pattern that continues over a long period of time, yeah, they probably both, in most cases, they both need to do their own work.
Yeah.
And whether that's separate or together, it really depends, right? The answer, unfortunately, is always it depends.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you put an anxious person with secure. Now, everything I've read and heard, typically secure people attract secure people, and the
Yes.
anxious attracts the avoidant, which
Yes.
creates that cycle of chaos. And I
Yeah.
asked my followers like what they thought, if they were anxious, secure, avoidant, or no idea. 33% said they were probably anxious, 33% said they were secure, 17% said they were avoidance, and
Okay.
17% had no idea. So let's talk
Yeah.
about the anxious and the avoidant, because that's more common.
Yeah.
Like in that scenario, what is your best piece of advice? Because everything I read, especially if you're dating one, everybody says leave them. Best thing I ever did was leave the avoidant, avoid the avoidant. But at the same
Mm,
time, you can't always just leave somebody. Like if you're in a
yeah.
marriage and that's happening, or you actually like this person and you want to see if it can progress somewhere, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So the question I would have is those are usually the anxious who are chanting that message,
Right,
right? They're
right,
like, they're the ones in the corner screaming, leave the avoidant. And I say,
right,
okay, that's interesting. So you've deemed their dysfunction irreprehensible,
right.
unrepentant, no way of ever solving, and yours is somehow redeemable, and
Okay.
theirs is not. And so I would first of all just challenge that and say, okay, what makes your dysfunction redeemable and theirs unredeemable? It sounds
Mhm.
like to me that the better answer is more obviously nuanced, which is to what degree is a person avoidant or anxious? Because both can be,
Right,
it's a spectrum, right? Because both
right.
can be to a point where, hey, maybe they're not relationship ready. Whereas others could
Great
be,
point.
there's going to be some challenges. There's going to be some hard stuff. You're going to have to work through it for
Yes.
sure. That's called being a human being and
Yeah.
putting in the
In a
work.
relationship.
Yes, yes. And I will say, yeah, I wouldn't wholesale categorize somebody as the unlovable who we need to
Right,
avoid at all costs
right.
before we have real good information on what that actually looks like.
I know, and
Yeah.
I know my husband, he's more the thinker, he's the engineering mind, so he takes a long time to respond. And we've had to
Mm,
learn skill sets where he needs to
yeah.
communicate, hey, I'm going to need some time to think on this, where I'm like, let's go, let's talk about it right now.
Right,
And
right,
that's
right.
you could call some of that my anxiousness, you could call some of that his avoidance, but it's not. It's also just how we
Right.
process. It's all communication. Like if he says, hey, babe, I'm going to need some time, and
Yeah.
I need to honor that time. But if he says I
Yeah.
need some time and he goes for 4 days, that's not okay. So we've had to
Right.
learn some of those skill sets in there. Now,
Yeah.
you talk about anxiousness, and it's interesting. I was looking at your website. Where do you believe an anxious, and a lot of people who are anxiously attached will say, well, the avoidant causes that in me. Of course, when
Mm,
someone's going to be withdrawn, silent, stonewalling,
mm,
with withholding affection, whatever that is, the anxious person is like, well, it's their fault. Would you take
yeah.
it all the way back to childhood? Is that your
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
feeling on it?
So let me give you two pieces here because there's a kind of a couple of golden nuggets and answers that I want to give you here. So one, in the moment, I mean, in short, to give you a little preview, yes, I believe a lot of this is connected to earlier childhood experiences. The data and the research show that that's true, and we'll talk about how that works. But okay, the thing that we're wanting to move away from, if we want success in any of these relationships, we have to avoid not the avoidant, but the victim mentality. And the victim mentality says, they make it in me, avoid the avoidant, it's all their fault. I am just a boat on the river being tossed to and fro wherever I go, and I'm not in control. It's like, no, 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 no. Put your
But
motor in the water.
the avoidance says that about the anxious too. They
Oh
have their
yeah.
own like verbiage about like, oh, well, it's because of you I have to like pull away. It's because, so it's victim both sides. That's great.
Well, and here's the thing though. In any of those victim narratives, there's a little bit of truth, but we can't make it black and white. There's a little bit of truth, and I'll tell you this. Number one is most likely these things have come from previous patterns that your partner did not create. They were
Yeah.
in there, and they're your fears, they're in your insecurities, and that's how you respond. And by the way, the anxious and the avoidant, they are almost identical at their heart. They just respond differently. The
Mm,
anxious have a fear of abandonment, and the avoidant have usually fears of rejection. They relate to the words differently. Those are basically the same thing. It's the
yeah.
idea of losing connection with somebody, right?
Yeah.
And so what will happen is it's fight, flight, and freeze. The avoidant, they are more on the freeze and the flee side of things. The anxious, they're on the fight and they're on the fawn side of things, which is I'm going to do
Okay.
everything I can to make you happy. And so, first of all, I don't put yourself on a high horse and think if you're anxiously attached that you've got the superior dysfunctional attachment style. That no, you just respond differently. You're more vocal about it. And
Yeah.
so therefore you take up more space in the conversation, which gives you an opportunity to feel like you've got the right argument. So let's back that off again because that leads us down the victim mentality. So everyone has responsibility for their own patterns. So cool. That's the ownership mindset. The other piece of ownership is, but my behavior, the way I act when I'm in my dysfunctional attachment style, it does influence theirs. It heightens it. So we'll give the
Mhm.
example of the avoidant first. The avoidant is shutting down, withdrawing due to their underlying programming and how they've kind of learned to protect themselves from rejection or abandonment. And what that does for the anxious, sure, that's going to be a trigger. That's going to look like abandonment. That's going to hurt. They're going to
Right.
start, going into their own cycle. But again, they have the ability to either heal that cycle, go
Mhm.
in, start criticizing him more. You never listen. You always do this. You don't love me. Coming at him with teeth and claws, which only sends him further into his
Right.
cycle. So yes, can you influence it? Yes. And I kind of gave you a snapshot of how the anxious do it as well. The anxious, you might have a partner who it has an avoidant tendency, but they're generally not going to present as avoidant unless the relationship creates a lot of that
Right.
pressure. Maybe
Right.
heavy push for commitment early in the relationship, heavy criticism when the anxious doesn't get their fears of abandonment soothed through all the text messages, the reassurances, and the "I think you're beautifuls" every second of the day. Then the avoidant starts to feel like, "Holy crap, this is a lot," and they avoid. Again, it's their choice to avoid, but you have influenced the avoidant or you kind of heightened it in them. So,
Right.
are you responsible for let's put it in this, are you responsible for the initial fire that's within them, the avoidant fire, the anxious fire? No, but you can definitely throw gas on it. You for
Yeah.
sure can throw gas on it, and that is
Yeah.
on you.
Yeah. I'm a believer. You said ownership. And I used to be a high school teacher and I had this giant sign that said own it, like this big. It said own it.
Yeah.
Because when kids would
Yeah.
be talking, I just point at them and then I point at the sign and all I wanted them to say was, I own it. But they're
Yeah.
always like, well, they were talking to me first. I'm like, it don't
Right,
matter.
right.
I caught you. But I like the word ownership. Like, and this happened recently with my husband. Like, I did something, I chose to do it. But I
Right.
also know part of he wasn't meeting a need. But then again, it's like, and I think you mentioned this, but there are needs that you have that you need to have met in a marriage, in a
For sure.
relationship that you've decided I'm cutting everybody else off. I don't want other men to tell me I look pretty. My need
Right.
is words of affirmation. And so,
Right.
how do you, as a woman, and I'm just using me as an example,
Right.
how
Fair.
do you say, hey, I do have this need without being like, I'm not trying to push it on you, but you're now the only man who's kind of expected to meet that need, and maybe
Right.
it's not just you look pretty, it's you're, smoking sexy hot. I don't want to hear from any other man, but I want to hear from my man. And so
Yeah.
how do we move towards a person without looking like we're being anxious or we're needy or because
Yeah.
I think we had a couple words on your website, you're too much.
Yeah.
I'm not a people pleaser at all, but I can be, looked at as Katie, you're too much. Your expectations are too high. But how do
Yeah.
we have that still met in the same space that's supposed to be met?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a surface level answer and there's a deep answer, and I think both are important because the surface level is a strategy, such as a communication skill or a way of
Okay.
thinking about the moment, right? But then the deep answer is changing the core of your programming that then changes your response in that situation. So we'll take the example of you seeking words of affirmation, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at the
From
core,
my spouse, words of
from your spouse,
affirmation that only my
fair,
spouse should be giving me. It's making
fair.
sure I'm not hearing it in other places. Okay.
Right. And if we expand this to like a general pattern, maybe it's in a marriage like you are, maybe it's dating, either way,
Yeah. Serious
if
relationship. Yep.
let's pretend we'll kind of build this character out that might go beyond who you are. So we'll take some liberties here. But it's an individual who probably has that anxious attachment. So meaning at the core, they've got some insecurities. They really have this fear of like abandonment, that others are going to leave them. Because of that, they're constantly maybe seeking reassurance, outside reassurance. They have a hard time giving themselves the reassurance and knowing that they're enough, that they're okay. And in a relationship, they will oftentimes put a heavy demand on their partners because they're outsourcing that ability to reassure their worth and their validation. They don't do it for themselves at all. They fully outsource it to other people, right?
So
So when
can
they
I just
tell
time out for a
themselves,
second?
yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
they outsourcing it or just telling a need?
There is a difference. So,
Okay.
and it's a little bit nuanced, but in this case, I want to make it black and white,
Okay.
being there just be so that it's kind of clear on the principle and knowing that there's always layers of nuance. Because yes, to have your partner tell you that you're pretty or that they love you or all those other things, that's very important, and that's there's some sort of base functioning on that,
Yeah.
right? But there gets to a point where if you can't hold your own sense of self-worth, if you can't hold your own sense of reassurance, and all of it is put onto your partner,
Right.
then it's fully outsourced at that
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Whether it's a need,
All of
whether
it.
it's not, it's just,
Right.
yeah, it's just all of it. And here's the thing, somebody might go, well, it's not all of it. And it's hard to say at what point does it become um if we were looking at the percentage, like how
Yeah.
much can you do on your own for you and how much are you giving to them? It's hard to say. There's no like percentage, right?
Okay.
It's about looking at overall patterns in the relationship, looking at does this create dysfunction on a general level, is this healthy? I don't want to get too much into that, just for building the concept of okay, but what do I do about this, because there's
Yeah.
a whole other conversation on, well, how much can I expect of them?
Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to pin that one for just a minute because then we'll chase squirrels on it. So let's say this person is outsourcing the majority, if not all, of that reassurance to their partner. Okay. Most likely, when they seek for that need to be met, and it's sure there is a need there, but when they seek for the need to be met, they will probably come with a spirit of fear and anxiety rather than calm, security, seeking connection. And the fear and anxiety usually sounds like criticism, not like actually petitioning for your needs. So they'll show up and say, you never tell me I'm beautiful. You never tell me that you love me. You don't even care about me. You do this, you do that. You're pointing out the
Right.
gap in which they do wrong rather than pointing out what you want. And all the time I hear the anxiously attached, and anxiously attached listeners, you might be like, dang, this guy's kind of hard on me. And I'm not meaning to be hard on you because I love you the most, actually. I am you. I am the anxiously attached. I've been there. And I'm just sick of people sitting in the dysfunction and feeling the hurt of it. I was like, I want you to get out. So
Yeah.
the anxiously attached, take this with some love, but you may sit there and be like, oh, I'm so honest. I say what I need. I say what I want, kind of from this proud place. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're saying what he's doing wrong. And I'm not saying that you're doing that. It's just for the example. You're pointing out the gap. You're not pointing out the need. And so let's back this up. Like I said, strategy and deeper. Strategy on a surface level is okay, instead of framing it as you're doing these things wrong, frame it as, hey, when you give me words of affirmation, I love that. That's so
Right.
meaningful. I've felt this longing to hear more of that recently. Do you mind sharing with me some of those things more often, and making a request, right? And then on the other hand, the core is, okay, in the moment, you're probably not going to be able to articulate what I just did, that
Yeah.
beautiful need in that nice way, because you're going to be emotionally flooded. Because at the
Right.
heart of it, you're feeling like he's abandoning you. You're not good enough. And all of this anger and fear and all of this. And so good luck using the words I just used. What you really want to do is address the core, heal, overcome the fears of abandonment, the I'm not good enough story, learn how to fill up your own emotional cup. And then when you go to ask for the need, you can totally do it in that sweet, awesome way that I just mentioned, where you're calm, you're collected, you're petitioning rather than criticizing.
Right. Right. When you speak mostly to the anxiously attached. I
Yeah.
mean, is that your specific work that you do is with the
Yeah.
people who struggle in that? Because, I've seen the dismissive and it because we kind of go back and forth a little bit. They feel a different thing. Like we feel nervous about the rejection. They feel like they're criticized. There's not good enough. So
Yep.
it's different but the same. It's funny that
Oh
you say
yeah.
that. It's very different but the same at the same time. So
Yep.
okay, so I love this idea, and I'm a big believer in the Gottmans, soft startups. I feel this when you do that.
Right, right, right.
It's really learning that skill set of how tone and timing. Tone
Yep.
and timing. And I grew
Yep.
up and I had parents that would say, Katie, you come on like a ton of bricks,
Mm.
which is true. But sadly, they never gave me any skill set besides that.
To do the
Um,
different. Yeah.
yeah, to do it different. I grew up with a mom. I used to say, Mom, I'm going to run away. And my mom used to say, I'm going to help you pack your bags.
Mm.
That does not make a kid feel secure, you know?
No.
And I do
No.
remember going into the closet and crying and just hoping somebody would come and find me, and they never did.
Mm.
So I can see even back in the past when they say, go back to the childhood, like where do you think that came from? Now, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that I think I'm pretty amazing. So I don't have like this insecure, Katie's not good enough. And I know that when I was single and dating, even if I broke up with someone, I always believed I'd get better. Like I always trusted that God had a better person that if I'm growing from each experience, I will be smarter in the
Yeah.
next choice I make. So I think that's an encouragement to people who are nervous. Like, what if I left? What if it didn't work out? If
Yeah.
you're growing and you're going to become smarter and have better standards for the next time and be a little bit more aware, I think it can go better. But
Yeah.
um, but
Absolutely.
I would say that I struggle more with like the rejection. And you said this word earlier. You said chosen.
Yeah.
In my heart of hearts, I want to feel chosen. You can be loved by someone, but not chosen by them.
Yeah.
And so I want you to talk a little bit more. Did you feel like you finished the core versus,
Yeah.
I want to talk
Yeah.
about
I've
chosen and expectations.
can I ask you a question
Sure.
that might be maybe off of that, because you
Sure.
mentioned something and I couldn't help but to feel something about it when you talked about you being in the closet and wishing for somebody to come and find you.
Come.
What was what was the feeling that, and maybe it's hard to remember exactly, but what would you guess was the feeling of the little Katie in the closet? What was she experiencing there, do you think?
Yeah, she wanted to be thought of, to be cared about. She
Mm,
wanted somebody to worry about her if she was okay. Is she
mm,
okay? Like, where'd
yeah,
Katie go? Because Katie was gonna
yeah,
go run away. Remember? I was like, I gave my mom the full details. Mom, I'm gonna run away. Like, I
yeah,
let her know. And then she's
yeah,
like, I'll help you pack your bags. And I remember it would be at
mm,
her bar stool. And then I'd be so sad that that was her response. I'd run to the closet and I would just cry. And I would just
yeah,
want her to come and be like, come here.
yeah.
Like one, she shouldn't have said that, but it's okay because she didn't know better.
Right,
Um,
right, right, right.
but I think that that fear of just crying in your closet is like, does anybody see me, hear me, care
Does
about me?
anybody see me? Does anybody
Yeah.
hear me? Does
Does
anybody
anybody
care?
care about me? Is
Yeah,
there like, does this person even care? And then
yeah,
you feel like they don't because they didn't show
yeah,
up or they
yeah,
didn't reach
yeah,
out. They didn't hug you. They saw you hurting and they just kind of didn't care.
yeah,
In those moments, you do have to learn to self-soothe and check what you're telling, the story you're telling yourself, and
right.
your worth. Where does it really come from? That person, if they show up, or even if they don't, you're still valuable.
Yeah. And I guess, and I'm asking these questions to help illustrate a point, and I'll reveal it here in a second. I'm sorry if this seems a little different,
No,
but
I'm here
and this is
for
a
it.
bit of a vulnerable question, but if you were to imagine, if you can like see her in the closet, you like think about her, like actually visualize her, and imagine going in and you having the opportunity to go visit her. Like you got in a time
Mhm.
machine and you get to open it up and you
Yeah.
sit by her. Maybe you're going to tuck yourself right there in the closet with her, and you say, "Hey, Katie." and maybe like grab her hand or you put your arm around
Okay.
her, like what would you be saying to her? What would that conversation look like?
It's so cute. I was getting a massage at the Ritz-Carlton recently, and this woman walked me through that whole process of big Katy coming to little Katy.
Yeah,
And it was
whoa, yeah.
and it was like I would come in joyful and be like, "Hey girl, come here. I got you. I
Huh.
got you. I
Yeah,
hear you, I see you, and I have you. And I
yeah,
know what you're feeling." I would totally feel that expression with her.
yeah.
And I would reassure her that it's gonna be okay and it's gonna be good, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And when you did that, or when you think of it now, did you feel like a felt sense of compassion for her? What did you emotionally have happen as you see yourself do that? And maybe not right here, but maybe the first time. Like,
Yeah.
what are the emotions that accompany you thinking about that?
Um, wisdom as big Katie, like, oh, if only she knew. If only
Mm,
she knew that it was going to be okay. Like you just want to
yeah,
impart that wisdom. Compassion on her little tears, just like
yeah,
that full sense of, I mean, I would say sympathy, not empathy, but like sympathy because you felt it too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then hope. Like every time I see little Katie, I'm proud of her and I'm like, girl, you'll be fine. I mean,
yeah.
even my daughter said to me recently, she's like, Mom, you're Katie Clark, you'll be okay. You know, and I was like, thanks,
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, but so for feelings, as watching her in her sadness, but still feeling hopeful for her and
Yeah,
knowing that it's my hope that's going to help her rise.
yeah. So what you're describing there, there's a couple things that are really important for the people to listen to, and I'm so glad that your audience has you because you're a great example of this. So, um, is we talked about the two different levels. One is the strategy, and then
Yeah.
one is the core, right? And the core looks like having an emotional reprogramming, an emotional transformation, not a logical one. Too many times people go to
Mm,
therapy and coaching and they read books and podcasts and they learn about all this stuff and it's very high level, intellectualized, but
right.
they never have an emotional experience that transforms the way they feel. And then what happens is that there's other versions of little Katie out there. Maybe they're named Emily or Dave or whoever they are out there listening, and they've had experiences like you, and they've had the same feeling of I just want someone to see me. I want somebody to come find me. And when they don't, then it hurts so much. And they carry that programming into adulthood. And then when
Mm,
their partner isn't giving them the reassurance or whatnot,
right.
that's when the fear, that's when the flooding comes up, and then they start acting in their dysfunction, right? And so we can see the dysfunction with such compassion. It's like, oh, that's just the little me putting up these walls, trying to
Yeah.
protect myself, trying to help myself. But what you did when you visualized her, when you went and sat with her, you created a new emotional experience directly associated with the part of you that responds in dysfunction, the little you, the inner child. So the feelings of hope, the feelings of compassion, the feelings of love quite literally starts to reprogram the part of you that responds with fear and anxiety. And so if somebody were to say, "But Trevor, how do I like reprogram the core? That sounds awesome. I've been doing this work forever and I'm not making any progress." Well, it's like probably because you're not having an emotional element as part of it. You're doing a lot of awareness work, you're doing a
Yeah.
lot of logical work, you're talking, talking, talking. But in what we do is we'll run people through these like on repeat, multiple, multiple times,
Yeah.
series of visualizations, processes where they're really coming in contact with that inner child to the point where in the future, when they feel a little bit triggered by a situation, their anxious attachment shows up. A, the trigger's softer. B, they
Mm,
happen less frequently. And when they do happen, they're like, oh, that's just my little me. Like, I got them. I'm going to take
yeah.
care of them. And they
Yeah.
move through it with grace.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I would say that even recently, I felt like I just wanted to go cry in my closet. I was like, I just want to go cry in the closet. Like I was just really sad about something. And you're right. I do a million podcasts, I read books, but I did a couple years ago. And does this have anything to do with shadow work as well?
It's very much related to it. Yeah,
Very much.
you could call it that if you'd like. It's kind of a there you start to realize as you study the different modalities of like
Yeah.
psychotherapy and whatnot,
Yeah.
they're kind of all saying the same thing. They just have like a slight idea difference, right? Like shadow work, parts work, IFS, inner child, they're
Yeah.
all kind of related to saying there's a part of me that operates in dysfunction due to some sort of hurt from the past, and I need to learn how to work with that part of me.
And it sounds like rewiring and refiring of the brain. Is that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like why we keep doing that? So I know someone recently went into this like 1 day breakthrough. 1 day it's going to be broken through. And I thought, 1 day? Like,
Mm.
I, I mean, do you think it could be done in 1 day? Are those like deep therapy sessions that take you back and to your, I mean, I've heard of these ones and I was
Yeah.
just going to ask you for details. Inside your mother's womb, like even beyond that, like when you're in the heavens, like what do you think of those?
You know, I'm not going to write anything off. There is some validity in being able to make a pretty rapid transformation in
Okay.
certain cases. Do I think that's going to be the common experience? No.
Yeah.
But let's say this. I think there's a much more realistic timeline on finding progress in this area than people give it credit. Because so many times people are caught in the how is your week therapy trap? And I'm not saying therapy is wrong or bad. It serves a very important purpose around diagnosing and treating clinical diagnosis and as a health intervention, right? And it's very,
Okay.
very important. There are times when people go with a less clinical need, which is, I want to feel more secure. I want to stop responding from this anxious place in relationships. And what they get every single week is, how was your week? You talk about it, they
Yeah.
validate you, you
Yeah.
pat you on the butt and send you on your way, and then you keep
Yeah.
doing it over and over and over again. And then people imagine that, well, that's doing the work, and I've been doing the work for 5, 6, 7. I had a
Yeah.
lady in our program that had been doing it for 20 years.
No.
And so I want to break this idea that says, okay, it's not a 20-year marathon. It's not, it can be happen much faster.
Yeah.
What we
I'd
do
agree
is,
with that.
I mean, we're the only ones in this industry that our program that we say, we will help you go from anxious to secure in 4 months. And if we fail, then we give
120
you,
days.
yep, and
120
we give
days,
you your
what you
money
say.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was crazy because that's not even something that's really trackable, meaning a person could just lie to us and be
Yeah.
like, well, it didn't work for me. But, I mean, you have to qualify for it. You have to do the work. But if somebody does the work, we've had no one ask for the money back, which is a testament to it working. So I say that not to be like, oh, my program's so great. What I say that is there is hope for a much more rapid progress
Yeah.
than I think people realize.
Yeah. I do think it's the work. I did a whole podcast on the work. People are like, has he done the work? That's a big word that people use. So you
Yeah.
do have something, you have the Secure Self Club. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, Secure Self Club, it's 4 months. And the guarantee is you do the work. And if by the end of the 4 months you're not satisfied, then you're not paying. There's a portion that's given to some of our coaches, but for the majority of it, we would hand it back to you. And the reason we have such confidence in that is because we've taken these elements that I feel like are oftentimes missing from a person's approach and combine them in one place. I mean, you're working, you have a structured plan and a framework. You know exactly where you're going. There's emotional experiences. There's actual tools for repetition. You have an individual coach who's guiding you the whole time, plus community and group coaching. It's just this. I wanted to create an ecosystem where every piece of it helped accelerate the growth process. And it's just the funnest thing in the world, honestly. I love doing it. It brings me so much joy. I run all of our groups, and so if somebody works in the program, they work directly with me
Okay.
for 4 months. We do small groups at a time so that they're really intimate. Um, and yeah, it's just a meaningful experience.
That's amazing. Now you only do it for, I mean, you only do it for the anxiously attached. Is there something similar to the dismissive avoidance? Is that something
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
different?
good question.
Have
So I
you
will say
created
this.
that for them?
Yeah. So the answer is the avoidant can get the same benefit out of the program. It's just marketed towards the anxious because
Yeah.
anxious are going to be more likely to engage in services. So
Yeah.
from just like a business standpoint,
Yeah.
it's hard to market to the avoidant. And number two is that, yeah, the avoidant are oftentimes doing less research to discover what they need, and so there's less of an audience there. So the answer is yeah, some of the language and how we present things might not relate exactly to the avoidant, but the core of the process is totally the same. We got people on both sides. I would say in any given group, we'll have like one or two people who are like, I'm definitely more on the avoidant side.
That's good. I mean, but
Yeah.
we talked about it. Deep in the core, it's just fear of rejection, fear of criticism, not good enough. Either way, both sides are just struggling with that from a
Yeah.
childhood wound. So, I mean, I'm so grateful that I had you on, only because I took it a little personal, and I know that I can struggle with anxiety and the anxiousness of all that. So, quick
Yeah.
question I always ask this at the end of a podcast. So, are you single? Are you married? And what's your status? And how did you meet somebody if you are with somebody?
Yeah, so I think this picks up the first question and the last question tie together right here. So I had struggled in the dating scene for a long time, failing, failing, failing. In that same season, when I had no job, I had a broken jaw. I actually then shattered my eye socket in a skiing accident. And
After
in
the job?
yeah, that was the first one wasn't my fault. The second one was my fault. I was doing something super cool on the second one. The first one, I actually got ran into. But skiing is like my life. You have to realize I spend a ton of time there and I go
Do
pretty
you
dang
live in
hard.
Hawaii?
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah, but I now live in
Okay.
Hawaii. It's a
Okay.
weird story, but around that season, I had shattered my eye socket and I was on the mend, and I had a black eye the night I met my wife because I was still healing. Um, and I had done a lot of my own personal healing and was much more secure. And so when I met her, I could recognize her security. I could clearly see this is the type of girl that I would want to be with almost from night one. And I didn't have that superpower before. I didn't have security X-ray vision where I could see into someone and go, I know what you got going on. I want you. So much so, and I mentioned the black eye because that night I did a video journal, and I only did like 5 of them in my life. It happened to be that night where I'm like
Okay.
videoing, talking to myself. And I say, wow, she's the kind of girl that I would want to marry. And for these reasons and these reasons, and I'm mentioning all this stuff. And just because I'm a bit of a romantic, at the end, I was like, you know what? Maybe one day I will. I don't know, because it's just a first date. And then because I thought it would be cute and funny, I said, well, Elise, if you're watching this, that means we're married or we're about to be. And then I was like, and then I hung up. I hung up the clip and I didn't show it to her until the night I proposed to her. I showed her the video and I was like, I recorded this the first night I met you. And I actually have a video of me showing her the video, and it's really, really cute. I'll post it again to my Instagram in the
We
next few
love
days,
that.
just because.
Chicks dig that. It's so cute. It's very cute.
Yeah. And anyway, so yes, now I have a beautiful, securely attached wife. I've got a son who's 2 years old, who has loving parents who are building security within him, and we've got just amazing things happening here, and it's all due to A, God providing the path from this happening, and then B, me doing the work to get to the place of security.
Yeah.
And so, yep, it's very possible to kind of have your happily and sometimes not always happily, because that's real life, ever
Real life.
after. Yep.
Yes. And for people who are in marriages where they feel like, okay, they didn't show up secure, they're in long-term relationships, they didn't show up secure. Do you say that taking your course is going to help at least one person, which will ultimately help both?
Yeah, so here's my thought on that. If you're in a situation, let's say you don't even know if you should stay or you should go, kind of thing. Like it's getting kind of rough, and that's because there's a big spectrum of dysfunction in a relationship. But let's say you're to that point where you're like, I'm not really sure. What I always tell people is you work on you. If you work on you and you become secure, two things are going to happen. Either one, you're going to influence the relationship for the better. We talked about how you show up can change how they show up, for sure. That's the difference between manipulation and influence. Influence is I change me and you naturally change. Manipulation is I'm working to change you. So work on changing you, and then they will most likely have some sort of change in them. If that change in them is not enough to create sustainability in the relationship, you will then have the security, self-respect, clarity, and peace of mind to say, I need to do something different here, and either set a boundary, step out, leave not step out. That sounds like cheating, but leave. And both options are great. Either it gets better because you influenced it for the better, or hey, you've realized with peaceful clarity what you
Yeah.
need to do. And unfortunately, it does look like closing the relationship. Okay, that's okay. And I know some of the anxious might hear that and be like, oh, I don't know if I even want to get to that point. It's like, but no, no, no. If you get to that point, there will be peace because it's
Yeah.
based on self-respect, love, trust, the ability to move forward in a hopeful state. And so that's what I would say. It's just work on your own security. And so, whether it's working with me, obviously I'm biased. I think that this is probably the best option and the most fast option. And it's not just bias. There's pretty good evidence that we just know how to do this. Or it's somebody else. I don't, I just want a person to find that. If I get to help them, cool. And if I don't, no worries. Finding that security then creates those beautiful outcomes that I'm talking about.
And I appreciate someone who's walked it, been there, done that, gets it.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to me. Like I'm not going to take marriage advice from someone who's always been single. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't really know about that. So
Yeah.
I love that you have been honest with your journey and you have, and I really like that you've created your own way of applying it. I mean, I was a Spanish teacher. Ironically, I was the worst Spanish student. I got kicked out of my first Spanish class within a
You
week.
know,
Ultimately, I became fluent in Spanish. I got a Spanish degree and I became a Spanish teacher. But one thing I learned is that I taught kids how to learn Spanish the way I learned Spanish, not the way the textbook taught me. Which even my daughter, I was her substitute teacher. She's like, Mom, your way is so much better than the textbook. So I
mm,
like that you've taken your way, what really worked for you, and kind of gone beyond the textbook so that
yeah,
other people can apply those things, those skills.
totally, totally.
Yeah. So
Well,
I might be coming soon.
hey,
Is always a good thing.
yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate being able to have a conversation about it because it's an important thing to say. And I will say this too. If a person's like, that sounds really cool, but I always say, but they're like, oh, I don't know about joining something like that. Well, podcast, let's talk about dating. Podcast is our first date. You want a second date with my information to see if you trust me? Then go over to my Instagram. There's a free seminar. It's called From Anxious to Secure. It talks about the 4 essential things you have to have in your process if you want to become secure. Go check that out. If that feels good, then yeah, you could book a call and we'll talk about what that could look like as far as helping you. But like, yeah, just I mean, why the heck should you trust me? You just met me, so go build some more trust, and if that feels good, then keep going.
Absolutely. I like that third date for a second, third date. Absolutely. You know what? We got to invest in ourselves so that we can show up better. And I'm
Yeah,
all for standards and understanding that, but finding a true security in who God made you and your
yeah,
worth and value to Him is big for me. And my
yeah.
listeners know that. Well, thank you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Instagram, The Art of Healing by Trevor. It's way too long. That's what I got in the beginning and stuck. So, The Art of Healing by Trevor, go find me there. That's also my website, theartofhealingbytrevor.com. There you can find the link to the Secure Self Club. Go watch some testimonials. They'll probably make you cry. They got like piano music. Good luck getting through
Eh,
them.
pull
And
the
then
heartstrings.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And on there, you also find that free training or on the Instagram. Or if you ever just send us a DM, we're really good at staying on top of the DMs. If you're like, hey, I heard you on this podcast. What should I do next? Kind of a thing. We'll give you some ideas on kind of where to go. We're very responsive. So Instagram, website, those are usually the best places to go.
Love it. Love it. We just thank you for coming on, sharing your journey, being honest, and we'll probably have you on again. So,
Okay.
Trevor, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for joining. Would you share this with a friend? Because we all got an anxious attachment friend out there. Until next time, great day.